The best explain option, that's okay, but the best viewing or the best experience you'll get with audio is through your computer speaker, so we encourage you to do that. For questions, you should see a Q&A button at the bottom of your interface, so we'll use that to keep track of questions, and feel free to ask those as we go along. If you have anything that you have questions on, we'll be keeping an eye on that as we go along this session. And today's session will be recorded along with all of the other sessions from the Summit. Those can be accessed on the Summit website at onlineexcellence.onenet.net. So if there's something that you wanted to see again, or if you'd like to share this with someone who couldn't be here today, please feel free to share this and all of our sessions from this and last week. And then before we move on to the session, we just want to offer some congratulations, as we normally do, to the winners of the 2019 Oklahoma Online Learning Excellence Awards. These folks are doing excellent work in online education in Oklahoma, and they deserve recognition, which we are happy to give them. So this is an award that's coordinated through the Council for Online Learning Excellence. The folks who review the nominations for this are the peers, the colleagues of the nominees. We had some fantastic nominations this year. So if you know any of these three individuals, please feel free to offer your congratulations. Professor Don M. Pierce of the University of Central Oklahoma is the recipient of the 2019 Teaching Online Excellence Award. The Institute for Learning Environment Design, also at UCO, is the recipient of this year's Innovation Award. And Marcy Grant of Southwestern Oklahoma State University is going to be the winner of this year's Individual Leadership Award. So well done to those folks, and we are very proud that we have them here in Oklahoma to advance online learning, and we feel very fortunate that they're here with us. So with that, we will go on, and Dr. Dodd, I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Kyle. It's good to see everyone there. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Kyle and I have done this bit for the last 3 years, so we thought it's kind of a fun time to check in on how online education is doing in the state of Oklahoma. And it's interesting because every year we go back to the data and we go back to the things that are being done, and we're always surprised about the great work that is happening across the state. And so today we're going to highlight some of that. We're going to unveil some new data. This is hot off the presses, so to speak, through the state Regents office about who is learning online, how are they learning, what are they learning. And the idea is that this is really a helpful context for all of us at various institutions for comparison purposes, but also to realize that we serve a very diverse population of learners, and it's imperative upon us to continue to do the great work that is ongoing there. We'll also talk a little bit about some of the key initiatives that are happening across the state. Kyle mentioned the Council for Online Learning Excellence, or COLE. There's a number of initiatives that are being fostered through that, as well as through a number of things like the new academic consortium, which I'll talk about as well. So in other words, I'm excited to share this. I hope you're excited to learn a little bit about this information as well. And so we're gonna focus on these things today. Who's learning online? How successful are they? What opportunities do we face as a state? And then ultimately, I think the big question is, what are we doing to build capacity for innovation in Oklahoma? Because we realize the things that are true today and the things that are working real well today, they may or may not be the things that work really well tomorrow. And so this idea around growing capacity for innovation is very important and very key for us in this effort. I will also say, as Kyle mentioned, as we go throughout today, you're going to see a lot of data, and I'm going to kind of unpack some of that data for you, but that will undoubtedly present questions for you. And so feel free to post those in the question and answer area, and we'll get to those as we go throughout. And so the timing of that is often very relevant. We want to kind of catch it why it's fresh there as we talk through some of the data. So I'd encourage you to be interactive in that way. All right, so online learning by the numbers here. So this is again in 2017 to 2018, 60% of students in Oklahoma took at least one of their classes as an online format. That's considerably larger than what we have at a national average, which ranges around 30%, 30 to 33%, somewhere in there. And so we recognize that from Oklahoman standpoint, that online learning is an incredibly important tool for them as they pursue their educational journey. And so I lead with this number because if we ever think for a second of what we're doing is not important or not impactful for people in the state, we're dead wrong, because again, 60% of students are taking at least one of their courses in an online format during that time period. It's an important number. When we also look at who our learners are, they're a little bit older than what we would typically consider to be a typical college student, right? So almost 26 years of age is the mean age of an online learner. And those are those are slightly older than those that are not taking an online course compared to about 25 years of age. And so not a huge difference, but when we compare that across all the numbers across the state, it's a notable difference there that online learners are slightly older, and this would indicate that they're probably leveraging online learning to fit into their busy schedules, their work-life balance and family balance as well. So we have a question here. John asks, are these stats for graduate and undergraduate? Yes, John, these are graduate, undergraduate, but I'll sort of break that out here in a second as well. So you'll see some of that as well. So these are aggregate numbers at this point. So when we look who is learning online, more females than males on average there. So we see that, again, 63% versus 55% there, males versus females there. We also look at comparing between full-time and part-time. And so those students that are full-time students tend to leverage, who took an online course, tend to be a little bit higher than those that are part-time. Not a huge difference there. But that's actually a little bit of a surprising number. We tend to think those that are part-time may take more online courses, but at least from the latest data, that tends to not be the case there. So when we look at course enrollment in the state, there is a 22% of courses were offered online. And so this is a important number that almost almost a quarter essentially of courses that are offered in the state are offered in an online. So I have a question: is anyone else having trouble with me the last minute or so? Kyle, am I coming okay for you?
You are. I had to turn up my volume just a little bit. The audio on Zoom tends to do that sometimes.
Okay.
Once a presentation begins, and I think, unfortunately, the only thing that can really be done is just to turn up the volume a little bit. It's okay. A Zoom thing. I'm not sure why it does it. Okay. Well,
I'll try to talk louder. So, yeah, turn up your volume a little bit, and we'll see if we can go there. And if we miss anything, we'll be sure to get that information out there for you. So again, 22% of courses were offered online. Now, when we look at online course participation by graduates, so these are people who have graduated associate's degrees versus bachelor's degrees. So this is sort of the lifespan of their educational journey within those degree fields. 85% of associate's degrees took an online course within a 3-year time span. So those that graduated, 85% of them took at least one online course in that journey. That number jumps to 94% of graduates of bachelor's degrees over a 6-year period of time. So more likelihood than not, a student is going to take at least one online course in their journey into completion of their bachelor's degree or their associate's degree. So this is an important thing that students are going to encounter online learning in our state most likely. And so that's an important thing that as we look to, that we want to make sure that we're adequately supporting them as well there. So let me talk here a little bit about overall versus online enrollment versus student type. So John's question was, is this aggregated or is it separated out? So this data actually breaks out that data separately. So when we look, the vast 63% of undergraduate in-state students took at least an online course. That's compared to 58% of undergraduates who are coming from out of state. When we look at the graduate, this drops a little bit, slightly, not a whole lot, slightly, to 49% of graduates who are in-state and then 45% that are out of state. And so, this is across statewide numbers, the use of online learning is a little bit higher for undergraduates and then they tend to be even higher than that for undergraduates who are coming from an in-state perspective there. This is also some interesting data when we begin looking at the figure here Deborah mentioned. This is 2017 to 2018 numbers that are there. Good point. So the students taking online courses by academic level, this is a really interesting thing. We compare this to various years. We continue to see higher levels of utilization across levels. But you'll see that on average, as an undergraduate continues to matriculate through their degree program, as they get through sophomores, juniors, seniors, they tend to leverage online learning a little bit more. This year was a little bit different, though. We see that there was a relatively important gap for sophomores. So this would indicate that students are leveraging online learning a little bit earlier in their educational career. The other interesting sort of increase here was at the graduate level, at the master's level. So this was a relatively important trend that we're seeing more and more graduate level students taking online learning as well. So that was a notable difference between last year and this year. Kyle, is there anything else that you'd like to add at this point?
I think just one kind of observation that I've had since we started pulling this data a couple of years ago, it's kind of occurred to me that whenever we talk about our quote unquote online students, sometimes we tend to put them in a box as if students who are taking online courses are somehow different or have some kind of unique characteristic or trait. But what this data, at least in Oklahoma, bears out is that when we talk about our online students, it's all of our students. Even if they're traditional students living in campus housing and they're full-time, there's a very high likelihood that they're taking online courses. So who are online students? Well, they're all of them, almost. I think it's just important to remember that whenever we consider who we're talking about, it's a variety of different students, not one certain type.
Absolutely, yes. It's I always like to characterize it as students in Oklahoma are leveraging online learning as an important tool in their educational journey, right? It's not the only tool, but it's an important tool that they're pursuing there. It's a great point, Kyle. So when we look at course success, this is also a number that we've been tracking over the last 3 years at minimum, and I'm sure prior to that as well. That we look at overall completion, these are students who are earning some grade in a course, right? So they haven't failed or they haven't withdrawn. Overall completion stands at about 93%. Online course completion is at 91%. Now there is a gap here. However, when we compare this against what are like national literature and literature base, we have closed that gap significantly from what we would consider to be national. There is still room to grow, though. There are still important areas where we have to advance and do important work in terms of closing the completion gap for online courses. However, what we also know about the literature is that it's not about just the modality. So it's a completely doable situation. It really comes down to the quality of preparation for teaching it online. It comes down to the design of the courses, and it comes down to the student success resources that are wrapped around that online learning experience. And so we have to kind of keep these numbers at the forefront that we have not reached our goal yet, but we are making good progress in that regard. The stats on retention are a little bit different. When we look at retention rates of the overall retention versus students who took at least one online course, those that took one online course, the retention is slightly better, not a huge better, but slightly better. And the story I like to sort of tell through this data, again, is that if a student may be leveraging online learning, again, as an important tool to be able to stay in school and to be able to complete and to work towards completion of their degree. And so we recognize, especially in comparison with the enrollment data, the course data, and then the student success and retention data, we recognize that this is a vital component of how Oklahomans engage in their educational journeys there. So being at a high level of the data, within context, I want to talk a little bit about what opportunities we face as a state, looking at the data, but also looking at functionally what we're seeing through the work that Cole is doing, as well as the work that the state regents are moving forward with. The first one really being around student success. We have to be laser focused and absolutely bought into the idea that we have to help our students be successful. And, the answer to that question is whatever it takes, right? What is it going to take to help our students be successful? And this really looks, it could be from a course design perspective, many of the things I just mentioned, faculty support, but it ultimately gets to how we align strategically the goals of online learning success to the missions of our institutions. And so student success is an absolutely fundamental aspect to what we're doing here. The other thing that is really important in terms of opportunities is institutional collaboration. We've seen over the last 3+ years with the work that Cole is doing, bringing together over 100 people from institutions across the state, public and private, to really share ideas, to share their knowledge, to share their expertise. And that institutional collaboration is absolutely essential that will allow us to move forward and solve some of the key issues that we face as a state. And I'm actually going to talk a little bit about some of the very tangible, practical artifacts that is produced a little bit later on in this presentation that you'll want to be aware of. The third piece that we really see in terms of opportunities is support for educators. Over the last year, we've worked together with Cole and the new academic consortium there to really be able to provide professional development. We started with accessibility training for faculty across the state. And so we're really excited that that partnership is underway and that we're able to work together to not only provide resources, but that true support for educators that will help them meet the challenges that are there. Kyle, would you like to add anything on those pieces?
I just would echo the fact that, when we talk about these bullet points, we can point to things that are happening in all of these areas to advance online learning within Oklahoma. These are not just aspirational type of opportunities. These are things that have been identified by Cole, by the State Regents Online Task Force, by the new Oklahoma Online Consortium as things that we can really make progress in and things that we're taking actions to make progress in. So it's an exciting time to be part of this effort in Oklahoma because lots of things are happening, especially thanks to Bucky and Cole and that group that has been incredibly instrumental in advancing these things.
Yeah. I'd add that to Kyle's comments there that when Cole was started almost over 3 years ago, we began doing good work. It's made up entirely of volunteers from around the state. And one of the concerns that I had in terms of helping to usher that along is the long-term sustainability of that effort, right? These volunteers are giving of their time and their energy and resources in ways that you wouldn't even imagine. And so in terms of recognizing that work, we wanted to make sure that foundation that has been laid is one of sustainability. And so I'm really excited. As Kyle mentioned, the Oklahoma Online Consortium was actually created in a large part out of that need to ensure that the work that Cole was doing and the things that we were building across the state had the adequate resources and support and funding to make sure that they are long range and sustainable. And so that this fourth point here around sustainable outcomes is really something that we believe strongly in and are really trying to advance from the opportunities standpoint across the state level. So I mentioned Cole. We talked a little bit about Cole. There's at the moment 102 members across the state, 34 organizations. We meet regularly, on average about once every 6 weeks or so, once every 5 to 6 weeks. And we talk about the issues facing online education in the state, but we also advance some key innovation projects. So these are things that members of Cole say are important and they want to invest in, and we want to usher those things forward. And so we sort of grounded Cole in these 4 kind of principles, if you will. The first one being capacity through collaboration, right? That we want to build capacity for every faculty member, staff member, institution across the state, but we want to do that through a highly collaborative mechanism. And so that's been exciting to be a part of. We also recognize that we serve a diverse array of missions. Our institutions serve a diverse array of missions across the state. And so regardless of whatever that mission is, we want to make sure that there's empowerment, that Cole is being able to support that work and recognizing there's many different things that our institutions do and those priorities that are in place. We also wanted to be very clear that we have a teaching and learning focus rather than a policy focus in our work. And this is meaning that the things that are done through COLE have real and meaningful impact to the people that are actually doing the work at the institutions and our students. Policy is very important. It allows us to be able to manage and scale and do the important things that are there. However, COLE, and we do advise on that. So we do, and I'll talk about that in just a second, but the primary function is really the practical aspects of supporting teaching and learning in our state from an online perspective. And then the fourth piece is that COLE provides a window to our state regents and our online task force into the thought leadership that's needed. So as they're making decisions and choices from a prioritization standpoint, from a resourcing standpoint, and from a policy standpoint, that we want to be the very best advocates to ensure that they have all the information and context to be able to make the best decision for our state and our citizens. And so these four areas have really been the cornerstone of what COLE has advanced in our areas, continue to do. So these are just a couple of pictures. We have met every summer since our existence to do some planning, and I'll share with you kind of what we came out of there. But you'll see that these ideas, there are many different ideas that come up when you start to say, how do we advance online learning in the state? And these were what we really sort of set out to do, right? We wanted to create a faculty development series, you'll see there in one of these goals, that faculty in our state would be able to benefit from ongoing high quality educational opportunities there. These broke out in several kind of key areas. One was focused on accessibility, which I'll ask Kyle to talk about here in just a second, and one of the things we did last fall. We also focused on open educational resources. We actually have a subgroup through COLE that works quite extensively on OER, as well as some exciting things that are coming up with that. We also have a community of people across the state who work in initiatives like Quality Matters or course quality initiatives at their various institutions. And so we wanted to make sure that there was support for this ongoing course quality and the aspects of there. And so, and then the final thing is COLE identified that there was a real need across the state for what we'll call a learner readiness tool. So as students who were beginning their work in online courses, asking the question, what are we doing to help them be successful and be prepared for success in online courses? And so that's something that every one of our institutions could create on their own. But some may choose to do that. That's perfectly fine. However, as a COLE, as a body, we wanted to say, could we create something that anyone in our state or even beyond could plug into their course and be able to, again, provide students some resources about how they can get started strong in online courses. Now, I'm going to share with you, we actually unveiled that here during the summit. Gary Dodd from Rogers State did a fabulous presentation about that learner readiness tool, and I'll have a few images here for you as well. Kyle, would you like to talk a little bit about some of the accessibility training? Because this was really an exciting thing that we were able to get done this year.
Yeah, absolutely. First, I would like to, like I like to do whenever I get the chance, take the opportunity to brag on COLE a little bit. I've been here at the State Regents for about 4 years, and I've been privileged to be the staff liaison to COLE since its inception. And I'm a pretty optimistic person, and I'm a believer that a small group of dedicated people can change the world. Well, I can tell you that a medium-sized group of people from around Oklahoma have changed online education in a very positive way, and COLE has made huge tangible steps toward improving the quality of online education here in Oklahoma. And it's all thanks to volunteer effort. I know many of you that are attending the webinar today are part of COLE, so thank you for that. And Bucky, as I like to say often, has been a great chair, and he's never allowed to not be COLE chair. So it's like a life appointment, I've decided. So just anyway, I love to brag on COLE and the wonderful things that a group of volunteers have done for our state. I just can't overstate that enough. I know we have some folks from outside of Oklahoma on the webinar today, so we've definitely found a great recipe for success here in our state. So as far as the accessibility trainings, what we found as we started asking people what they needed to know, what they would like to learn about, one of the topics that kept on coming through consistently was accessibility. And I think part of it is, folks want to do right by their students, and they want to make sure that their courses are accessible for all of their students. And also, I think that there's some fear around the topic of accessibility because people don't know what they don't know, and they're afraid that they may be violating the ADA or something like that. And accessibility, and we don't want people to be afraid whenever it comes to accessibility. So we have been fortunate to work with Oklahoma Able Tech, our state's assistive technology state agency, and specifically Rob Carr from that agency to develop some trainings on accessibility. So what we did was kind of a roadshow where we went to several different parts of the state to offer these trainings on accessibility. And I wasn't able to go to all of them, so forgive me if I missed an institution, but we went to Rose State College, we went to Southwestern Oklahoma State University, we went to Enid and East Central University in Ada, and Rob gave great presentations on accessibility in all of those. It was about a 3-hour training. Accessibility is a really big topic, and you don't have, in about a half a day, you can really kind of scratch the surface, but he gave incredibly helpful information to those folks. We got really positive feedback about our accessibility trainings, and that is a topic that continues to be of great interest to people, and we are working with him now actually through the online consortium to do some on-demand type trainings on accessibility that'll be available to consortium members. So a very important topic, and one that through a partnership with another state agency, we were able to push out to several of our institutions at no cost to them.
That's great. Thank you very much. You'll notice that I actually, I added some notes here on this planning document. This is actually a screen grab from some of our internal planning documents from Cole, just to kind of see, where we're at, right? We launched these as our yearly priorities, and we're really crossing a lot of those off our list, and that's an exciting thing. I think it's important. It's an important differentiator because I believe we've all set on committees or teams or things like that you have very ambitious goals and things that you want to do, but for whatever reason you just can't quite get the wheels turning to get on down the road, and that's just not the case with what's happening in online education in the state of Oklahoma, and that's an exciting thing to be a part of. So so those are great things. As Kyle mentioned, the Academic Online Excellence Consortium, or the Oklahoma Online Consortium, was one of those really important things that came out of this work that's happening in our state from an online perspective. With many institutions or many state systems don't have a structure like this, right? To be able to invest in the growth and capacity building for online education. This has been a goal that we've been working on for some time, and I'm really excited that we were able to get this done this year. This is a big step forward that will allow us to do that. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the innovation projects that Cole has worked on, but also that broadly are happening across our state from an online learning perspective. The first is what you're engaged in right now, the Learning Innovation Summit. This was has a little bit of a background you may or may not know. Several years ago, prior to the start of Cole, we actually used to have some conferences. I think we did it every other year. However, it was at a physical location, so people would have to drive. It was a great conference. People really enjoyed it. However, we knew about that same time that the financial constraints really started to ramp up for many of our institutions, prohibiting travel, just not providing the right resources to be able to continue that. And so we began to sort of ask, like, well, we're the online learning people, so can we do this in an online fashion and format? And that's exactly what we did. So this is the third year, of course, for the Learning Innovation Summit. And on our website, you'll see recordings from presentations that we've given every year in the past. It's quite an important and exciting grouping of resources that are out there. We have on-demand resources as well as recorded live sessions for people to view. And that summit has really been a strong catalyst for moving ideas forward in our state. And so we're really excited to be able to continue that. I think we were looking just a little bit over 250 people have registered for the summit this year. That's a great number, and our attendance at our sessions continues to be very high and engaged there. So we're excited about that work. The second innovation project I want to highlight here is our learner readiness tool. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. But the learner readiness tool was something, as I mentioned before, was identified as a shared need across our state. I have to give a particular thank you to Gary Dodd for his work and his team's work on this. This truly was a team effort, but Gary was really the champion for it and moving it forward. And this is something that's going to have positive, far-reaching impact, both from a learning success, a student success standpoint, but also from a financial and resource standpoint across our state. And so we owe Gary and his team a great deal of gratitude for that work. The third point is the Open Educational Resources Subcommittee. This is one of the subcommittees that that's part of COLE that works specifically with open educational resources and the expansion of those. And then the fourth thing that I'll talk a little bit more about in each of these, but this one in particular, is the need to grow online education leadership development in our state. We recognize that it's important to invest in the development of faculty and staff and of course students. However, we also have to look at what are we doing to prepare our next generation of leaders to be able to take the reins and be able to navigate the very complex issues that often come with online learning success and strategies. And so we are underway with a project that will be partnered with and working on that as well. So the Learning Innovation Summit, just again highlighting that, we have our online website presence there. You of course went to that site most likely to register for this. This continues to be a living, breathing website that has been in place over 3 years that allows us a central hub to capture this information and make it available to anyone at any time, really. So we're really excited to be able to do that. Those the Online Excellence Awards, that was something that was started with the summit several years ago, and it gives us an opportunity to recognize excellence in the state. And if you go to the website and under awards, you see pictures and back information about the different groups of people that are doing fantastic work across the state. And so we're really excited that the Regents have allowed us to be able to recognize that excellence, and they support that in extremely important ways there. So let me talk about the Learner Readiness Tool. So the Learner Readiness Tool, as I mentioned, with Gary and his team, was really advancing it forward. And this is an online site that anyone can get to. In fact, I'm gonna kind of pull over and do a live demo here. So if you're on the onlineexcellence.onenet.net site, you'll notice that we have a new tab for Learner Readiness Tool. If you'll select that link right there can actually be placed in any of your courses. And this allows students to be able to go through and cover some important information about what it takes to be successful in an online course. And so if we click that and select that, you'll see there's a number of categories ranging from time management, reading rate and recall, learning styles, organizational skills, workspace and environment, and technical requirements. And so students can either begin or they can navigate through those various areas. There's also different resources and quizzes that students can complete as they go throughout the process. Again, it's a really great resource that can be plugged into any online course that is there. So we're excited to be able to unveil that. That joins the ranks, if you will, of our Guide to Online Teaching, which was published last year. So you can see that on our website, that anyone who's interested in kind of how to get started or best practices for teaching online can go and partake in that resource as well. So we're excited to begin building that resource, this online space that is out there. And again, this is all done through the shared work and ideas of volunteers within COLE. So we're really excited that's being done in that way. Here's just a few more screenshots there. We take a time management quiz. People can go and see, am I setting my expectations appropriately in terms of the time that I need to take. There's infographics. There's easy ways to consume information and to use that. I also mentioned the Guide to Online Teaching. That's another resource that we launched last year that, again, can be plugged right into your institution's professional development and be able to leverage and use that information. So the OER subcommittee was another point I mentioned just a little bit ago. And the efforts of this group have been very pivotal in growing our capacity for grantsmanship in the state. And so they focused really on some strategic grants for scaling open educational resources across the state. One in particular was focused a lot on STEM fields and creating workshops and things of that nature from that work. And so, this really has the idea of being able to advocate for OER efforts across the state. This is an area where we still have some work to do. We're still investing in and growing this, but there's a considerable amount of engaged, really engaged people that are working on this effort and doing fabulous work in that regard. So the things that we're doing already as a state to begin to implement that, but also hopefully bringing in some resources that will help us to scale those as well. The final piece I want to talk about here today before we open up for any questions, so you may be kind of thinking up your questions that you may want to ask here in just a moment, is this idea of online leadership development. As I mentioned just a moment ago, that we certainly have efforts underway in investing in faculty and staff and students in institutions broadly. However, the area that we still need to be investing in is the development of our emerging leaders so that they can begin and be prepared to address the online learning issues that are facing our state and our institutions. The reality remains that while many of these things, many of the experiences that we have in the academic field prepare us some for dealing with online education issues, the reality is that there are many nuances to it as well, dealing with regulatory, teaching and learning, institutional finances, all these sort of things compiled together to create a relatively complex leadership context, right, that people have to operate in. And so we really want to be developing leaders who are prepared and ready for this unique challenge, right? That they're not only sort of having to learn on the job, but they are prepared and ready to tackle those challenges. And so we actually, we collected broad scale input. We collected the Council of Presidents, Council on Instruction, and the COSA group, the Student Affairs group. And we really, we honed in on what are the things that you're seeing would be needed in a curriculum or a program like this. And, we talked about need for planning and managing student services, strategic planning, managing change, advancing effective practice. These are kind of some of the themes that came up. And so our approach at the moment is to actually look for existing leadership development programs that specialize in online learning, and there are a number of them out there, but actually partner with them to then bring in and customize a program for the state of Oklahoma so that we can leverage the things that are general in nature, but also customize it for the efforts that are there as well. So we're really excited to begin moving that forward and to begin some work in that. That will likely get underway in earnest in its planning this next year in summer and into the fall, with the intent that in 2020 we'll probably be in a position where we can actually implement an institute or something like that for online leadership development. So we're really excited about that work. So Kyle, any thoughts that you have before we kind of open this thing up for questions?
I think the only thing that I would maybe add would just be one more comment about the online consortium. It's a voluntary dues-based organization, and each institution's dues are set by the number of students enrolled. So, with the larger institutions being at the higher end and the smaller institutions being at the lower end of the dues structure. So, most of our institutions are members of the consortium. If you're not familiar with it, we have a steering committee that's made up of people designated by the presidents of the institutions that are members. If you're not sure if your institution is a member, please feel free to reach out to me. And I can let you know who your steering committee member is, and you can talk more with them about what we're doing and what we're wanting to accomplish. And also, since we're at the very beginning stages of organizing the consortium, if you have input on what you think that this organization should be doing, we're always happy to have that as well. And if you're at an institution that's not a member and you would like more information, I can get that to you as well. So feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, great, wonderful. So we have a question here from John. Hello, John. Does the consortium sponsor or fund educational research regarding online learning?
At this point, we're not, because we have just started. We haven't developed any kind of program to fund research. One of the things that we would like to do over this summer is to develop a grant program for people that want to develop open educational resources. So that is something that we have coming down the pike. We haven't had a discussion about funding research, but that is, certainly an avenue that we could use with the funding that we have. So that's a great idea and something that we could talk more with the steering committee about.
Yep. We have a question here in the chat area. Will the documents and screenshots be available to print? So we will make this recording available to everyone, and then we can also have a link to the slides as well. That'd be fine. Yep.
And if anybody would like the data, we can make that available as well. It's a spreadsheet with just a big old sheet with a lot of data in it. And if you're curious about online learning in Oklahoma, it's some great information that we can definitely share that as well.
Yep. Great. Feel free to continue posting any questions in here. We'll take just a few more minutes for those to come in. While you're doing that, I will offer just kind of some thoughts and concluding comments as those additional questions come in. First of all, it's a real pleasure to be able to participate in a group like Cole and more broadly the innovation that's happening across the state related to online learning. And I think we sometimes forget how unique it is sometimes to be able to collaborate in the ways that we do in the state. It's often not a natural thing, right? And so to have a group as engaged and as willing and giving of their time is just a real pleasure to do that. And there's still many things to do. There's still much work to be done in this regard. But I have no doubt that we have the absolute right team and the right structures and the resources in place to be able to pursue those innovations. And so it's imperative upon our state to move forward in this direction for our citizens, but also to really think about those core principles of student success and expansion and collaboration and things of that nature that are going to make online education what it can be in our state of Oklahoma. So it's a pleasure to be able to be a part of that. All right. Well, I don't see any further questions. Kyle, would you like to offer any? I do have one question here before you offer your concluding thoughts. How are faculty ensuring test integrity in the online environment? Deborah, that's a great question. There are actually many different ways. The ones that tend to come up at the top of the list, right, are sometimes technologically based. Things like online proctoring systems, like ProctorU, Examity, Proctorio, things like that, right? Those are important, right? Those are important things that deal with academic integrity. However, this is a much, much broader issue that goes down to how we design assignments, the feedback that we provide to students in the classroom, how it's designed. I would like to think about this as, are we designing the environment that is valuing and conducive to academic integrity versus things that actually encourage academic dishonesty in some cases, right? So these are things that certainly is an issue and has been a topic of conversation within Cole really since its inception, and will be undoubtedly an issue that will continue to face the group in the future as well.
We had a fantastic presentation last year or the year before on online cheating, actually at the summit. So if you're interested in watching a recording of that, I posted it in the chat box, and it was a really great presentation in that area.
That's great. We also have another question from Lori. Are there more training planned for educators? We received the accessibility training. Will there be more? So,
yes. So we are planning more types of professional development for consortium members, especially. And whenever we do the things like this, the summit, I mean, it's open to everyone. The consortium type things are open to consortium members, and the reason for that is because we use consortium funding to develop them and present them. So our team, our steering committee is working on different types of professional development, and really the infrastructure for that. We would like to have an online LMS type system to house a lot of the professional development that we're going to offer. If your institution is a member of the consortium, we recently had a great presentation from Randy Dominguez at TCC and Dana Linden Bridgette at Rose State College on getting started in online teaching. It's about a 2-hour presentation. It's available on demand. for folks that are in the consortium. And we have some great expertise on lots of topics here in Oklahoma. And we're also looking at topics that people outside of Oklahoma could present on. So yes, and long answer to your question, we are in the planning phases of developing more of those trainings for folks.
Yep. I will also point out, and I'm glad, Kyle, that you posted that recording in there. So on our website, you can actually go and see recordings from all the past years that are there. All the way older entries there. You can even go to the past back in 2017 even there. So those are things that if you want to go and look and see, here's lessons for teaching a short course, or teaching tips from Rogers State. So there's a lot of different resources that are out there that are free and available for you to use. So a lot of professional development that's available. So okay, all right. Well, we got one more, John. Who should I contact to obtain access to the data set?
I'm happy to provide it. If you want to shoot me an email, John, I can get that to you. And I'll type my email address in the chat so everybody can have that. Great, perfect.
All right, give you any other few seconds here on the any other questions? I'm not seeing any others. So Kyle, any concluding thoughts from you before we sign off today?
The only other thing that I would mention is, just as I do with every presentation, to make a plug for our next one. So tomorrow is the final day of the live sessions for this year's summit. Kenny Tapp will be presenting at 10 a.m. a practical guide to teaching online courses. You can see there on your screen. Go online and register so you can get the link to join that webinar tomorrow. And we'll also be streaming it, as with all of our other ones, on Facebook. So it's been a fantastic summit. We've had great participation, some really wonderful presentations. So I hope that you'll be able to join us tomorrow for that one.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you for participating in the summit. If we could be of any help to you, please don't hesitate to reach out. So thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.